Hello everyone, this is Anne Frost from the I Thought I Knew How podcast, and we are going to take our gauge swatch that we knit as we prepared for the Maakin for the MRI knit along, and we are going to steek it. So I designed the steek so that the end of one round, beginning of the next would line up so that we have two colors that appear to be next to each other rather than our checkerboard. So that is actually where we are going to cut, okay, is between those. So that's my one supply. I have a small darning needle. I have my small scissors. I have some contrasting yarn. This is an light oatmeal-y shade that's going to stand up well. And that contrasting yarn is not going to show. So this really is a good time to pull out. You're going to want some matching wool, but it's a good time to use some scrap yarn. I have a crochet hook here because we are going to reinforce this steek. Some people get a little nervous about steeking. And so I'm going to show you how to reinforce it using just some very simple crochet. If you really are anti-crochet, you can just cut this. Especially if you use the Shetland wool, it will not go away from you, I promise. But we will go ahead and reinforce it. The method I show you actually is going to be helpful in another way, and we'll get to that. And then I have my sharpest crafting scissors here. These are my fabric scissors that I save so that they stay nice and sharp. So I'm going to get rid of those for now. I'm going to get rid of this for now, I'm going to get rid of this for now, and we are going to focus on our steek and prepare it. So I'm going to reel off enough of my contrasting yarn to work with. And what I'm going to do is looking at this. So here is the line that we're going to cut. It runs between two stitches, and that's where we will eventually cut. I'm going to come over here to this row, between this row here, and I'm going to bend my knitting. So that's just a few stitches over from that combined line. I'm going to bend my knitting, and I'm going to start with the right side. I'm going to hold my knitting so that I have my steek area, and then where I'm going to do my reinforcement past me, if that makes sense. So the steek, where I'm going to actually cut, is closer to me than where I'm about to work. And I'm just going to go a few stitches over. And looking at this, so I have a V of one stitch here and a blue V here for the next stitch, and a blue V on either side. So I'm actually going to aim for, well, let's see, hold on. Here's my steek. I'm going to aim for just right here between these two stitches. And I'm going to fold so that the silvery is on one side of the fold and the blue is on the other side of the fold. And I'm going to follow that line down here. And that's where I'm going to insert my hook. So if I straighten this out a little bit and hold it up, you can see I have the left side of one stitch and the right side of another stitch that I'm going through with my crochet hook. And I'm just going to wrap this over and pull it through. And now I'm just going to let that tail dangle. Okay, now I'm going to maintain that fold. And now if you look, my V stitches are pointed to the bottom on both sides, but when I fold, it looks like I have V stitches running this way. So you see I have a V right here, I have a V right there. And if you want to think of those as stitches that you're going to go through, rather than thinking of it as one leg of one stitch, one leg of the other, you can do that. but that's where I'm going to go under. I'm going to go under that V that points upward. Whoops, I stabbed my yarn. And yarn over, pull through with my crochet hook, and pull it all the way through that loop I made before. One thing I forgot to mention, pardon me, is I am using a crochet hook that is smaller in diameter than my knitting needle, so I cannot remember now if I used a 3mm or a 3.25 when I knit this, but I am using a 2.75 because crochet stitches are a little bit bulkier than knit stitches, so I want to use a smaller crochet hook. So I've inserted it into the next V pointing that way, or if you're thinking of it the other way, in the left leg of one stitch and the right leg of the other. Yarn over, pull through again. And I'm going to continue this way all the way down. Now there is a reason why I had you start at the bottom and work up. And that's because this reinforced steek is going to make the edge bend after it's been cut. And you'll actually be able to see the bend even before it's cut. We'll put a bend in the fabric, and that's going to make it easier to attach the ends with the little frayed bits of yarn hidden. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off, and then I will show you the other side. Okay, now you want to take this all the way to the very last stitch that you can get it through. Okay, and then I'm just going to pull up on the loop a little bit. And trim that off. So there's the first side done. Now, if I lay this flat, you can see I already have a peak or a ridge started there. You can see how that's bent the work. When I cut this bit here is going to automatically turn under for me now, which is why I wanted to do the right side from the bottom up, because I wanted that bend going in the right direction. But now on this side, I also want it to fold under. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to go from the top of my work downward. So I'm just going to do the same thing. So looking at my work, here is where we are going to cut. So I'm going to come a few, let's see, I was over by about 1.5 stitches. I'm going to come over here. And that's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. Just pull it through to get it started. The tail can just dangle out of the way. And I'm just going to, I'm just going to go into the next one and make sure that I get through both. If you're new to crochet, it's helpful to turn your hook under. Instead of trying to pull through this way, it's helpful to turn your hook under like that. And you get an easier time pulling your loop through. Okay, so there's my ridge that I am going to work my way down. Just the same way. Yarn over, pull through the loop. Oops. Yarn over, pull through the loop. And if you are very comfortable with crochet, you can do this as one movement. And it goes fairly quick. If you get lost, just look for the next spot where you have those alternating colors. And that helps you keep track of where you are. If you're going to insert your needle and you see that you're inserting it into 2 blues, you know that's wrong, unless you're at the very beginning or end. Going along your ridge line, you should have one in one color, one leg in one color, one leg in the other color. It's one reason why we did the checkerboard, to help you see where to place your reinforcement. And it's the same when if you decide to put this reinforcement in where your pearls are, it's the same thing. You're just looking for one leg of each. See, I got an extra leg there. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Okay, and that was the last stitch. Pull that through. Okay, so I'm not going to need my waste yarn for a moment. Set that aside. Now you can see with this reinforcement, I have like a valley or 2 ridge lines running through here. And right along here in the middle, that is where I'm going to cut. And I'm going to do that now. And it is not scary, I promise you. So I'm going to line up my scissors along that ridge line, and I'm going to cut between those stitches. There we go. This steek is cut. And if I look at this line, you can see if I pull on those stitches, they're not going anywhere. We got a little bit traveling there, but look, if I pull on that, it really is not going anywhere. I'm not being gentle. Other side, I'm pulling on those. They're fraying a bit, but they're not running away. I'm having to really tug to get that to happen. So don't be afraid. I promise this is going to be okay. As long as you cut a nice straight line, you're going to be good. I'm going to get rid of this fuzz. And let's get set up to take a look. Now look at that. Aww. So this now, once I have the steek secured, I can use this as a little chunky bookmark or a little mat, or however I feel like using it. Okay. So now that this is cut, we are going to fold this over and secure those steeks to the back of our work. And once we have done that, we are done. So let's get set up. I have a small darning needle because I'm using Jamieson & Smith. It's very fine yarn. Don't need a giant darning needle. Going to get it threaded. And this is just scrap yarn. I'm gonna go ahead and cut off a generous amount so that I have what I need. And to weave this in, to get it started, I'm just going to run it through my turning ridge. And you can secure this however you want to secure it. This is just how I'm securing it today. Okay, so that's ready to go. And these starting and ending bits, I'm just going to lay along my steek, the back side of my steek, and I'm just to get them out of the way. And I'm going to fold this back against my work. Now, to make sure that you are securing this, and attaching it, in a consistent way. You want to keep track of what your ridge, your turning ridge looks like up here. So I want to make sure that this row of stitches here is always on top as I am securing this steek. If that turning ridge isn't on top, if I mess up my fold, it's going to be noticeable from the other side. So this is actually the trickiest part of steeking, I find, is just making sure that your turning edge stays consistent. But now that I have everything tucked away, and you can see how that ridge helps me tuck all those ends away really easily, I am just going to whip stitch this to the back of my knitting. And in the ribbing, I'll just do that through a bump. And when I get up into the color work portion, I will actually run that through one of the floats. So I'm going to split a float and run it through the crochet bit. And I'm going to reposition my hands and make sure that that turning ridge is in the same spot. Again, I will go through, split a float, and go through the crocheted bit. Reposition, make sure that that edge is consistent. Split a float, go through the crocheted bit. And you can see that's securing that in place. Split a float, go through the crocheted bit. Before I do a stitch, I reposition my hands and make sure that that turning ridge stays the same. Now I've been going through the gray floats going up. It doesn't matter if I go through a blue float. It's whatever float is available where I need to make my next little connection. Okay, that's still the same, and you can see the other side is, you're not seeing where I'm putting those stitches in. It's not yanking at the floats. There's a little float there. Through the connection. Through a float, through the crochet bit. As I come up, the top of this is going to want to poke up, so I just want to tuck that down. And again, I want to make sure that that's in the proper position in relation to what I've been doing here. Go through a float and the crocheted bit. Float, crocheted bit. Okay, now I'm coming up on my end. I want to make sure that that's all lined up. Everything's tucked away. Looks good. Now I'm out of float, so I'm just going to go through a purl bump and the crocheted bit. And through a top purl bump and the crocheted bit. If I turn that over, there is my finished steek on the other end, on the other side. So I can fasten this off really just by going through, I just go through the bit of the crocheted edge that I can see. Because I'm using Shetland wool, this is all going to get gently felted together as it lives its life. So there is one side of our steek. Ta-da! Now this other side, it's the same process. So you are going to want to put your tails from when you crocheted your reinforcement along the back, just to get rid of them. And if you need to, I'm going to just trim those up. They don't need, there's no reason for them to be so long. They can just be itty bitty and get tucked in. And then fold that over. And again, I would anchor, where's my needle? Before I fold it over, actually, I would anchor my thread through that reinforced ridge. Make sure everything is tucked in. Fold over. And I'm going to repeat the process. Make sure I have a definite idea of what stitches are at my turning ridge. And I'm just going to start the process over. So here I am at the very end. I'm going to look to see at the start here, I have a little bit, just going to use my needle to tuck it over. I'm going to find a little purl bump to anchor my starting to. And I think it looked like the other one, I'm going to need to go back and secure the start of my other side a little better. So I'm just going to make sure that I get that really well this time. Now that that's anchored, I'm going to repeat the process. So I have my turning ridge there. It's very clear for me. And I'm going to find a place to anchor it. On this point, on this side, it's lining up with a knit stitch for me in the ribbing area. So I'm going to pull one side of the knit stitch and go through the crocheted area, the crocheted ridge. Go a little higher up. I have a float. I'm going to split the float. Go through the crocheted bit. And I'm just going to continue this process along. So make sure that I see where my turning row is and that that's lined up properly still. Split a float. Grab the crocheted ridge. Split a float. Grab the crocheted ridge. And I'm going to continue my way up. Okay, and now I'm just going to anchor the edge of this back through my work. And I'll clip that off. And there we have it. The steek is done. So of course on our little swatch here, that's going to seem very bulky. When you are knitting the cowl, you're actually going to pick up your stitches along this ridge here on one needle and along the other ridge on another needle, and then you'll do a 3 needle, you'll knit. It's not a bind off, you're just going to knit with 3 needles to get the stitches from this side, the stitches from that side onto one needle, and that's explained in the pattern. But that's where you will do your picking up, is along these edges that we've made here, and that will hide that sort of bulkiness. So these will be hidden inside the cowl. And then you'll knit on a little swatch here. So that of course is for the Harriet's cowl, because this is our practice swatch for those of us who are knitting Harriet's cowl for the MRI Mackers knit along, or for any reason. But in the meantime, I'm going to actually reblock this, because you can see from where I blocked before, it has a pretty solid turn worked into it. And once I have reblocked it, it'll lie flat, and I can use it as a little decoration on my desk. So I hope that was helpful for you. Do not be afraid to steek your knitting. It was something I was very worried about for a very long time, and then when I started learning about it, I found out it really is not scary. So don't be afraid. Thank you so much for watching and for taking part in the knit along to benefit the MRI Mackers in their fundraising efforts as they work to try and raise money for a MRI scanner on the Shetland Islands. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.